Hello YouTubers! I will be going through this week's games, review last week's tips and leaderboard of our footy tip comp, and also go through my Brownlow Votes for season 2025. My Brownlow predictor after round 22 are in top spot with 35 votes. We have N. Dacos, Collingwood, and trailing by 2 votes in second spot we have B. Smith, Geelong, and in third spot with 29 votes we have N. Anderson of Gold Coast. In fourth spot we have C. Sarong, Fremantle with 28 votes. To round out the top 5 on 27 votes, N. Wanganing Moreira of St Kilda with 27 votes. These are the top 5 of my Brownlow medal predictor after round 22. Let's look at my round 22 votes that I predicted or I've got last week. Unfortunately, I got 2 incorrect. That was Collingwood against the Hawks. The Hawks had a good 64-point win against the Maggies. And in the second one that I got incorrect, Sydney Swans had a magnificent 2-point away victory against the Brisbane Lions. Therefore, for round 22, I scored 7 out of 9 votes correct. Let's look at the Talking Everything AFL ladder for the footy tips. In top spot with 133 votes, we have Patrick L32. And in second spot with 131 tips, you have me, Talking Everything AFL. And in third spot with 130 tips, we have Red Dead Redemption. And to round out the top 4 with 129 tips, we have I Am Hacks. These are the top 4 of the Talking Everything AFL footy tips after round 22. Before we continue, I would like to ask for a very small favour. If you enjoy this AFL content, please take a sec to subscribe to the channel and like the video. That would be awesome. Okay, let's return back to the show. The first game played on a Friday night is between Essendon Bombers and St Kilda Saints at Marvel Stadium. Last week, the Bombers were competitive but lost to Geelong by 44 points, whereas the Saints had a close 4-point win against the Richmond Tigers at the MCG. The players in the mix for the Bombers are Owen, Elhari and Smart. The players in the mix for the Saints are Troglagio and Hastings. Just looking at where the two teams are at, Essendon have lost many games in a row. They haven't won since round 11, and the Saints have had some close wins in the last few weeks and won 3 in a row. It's going to be a hard game to tip, and with Essendon having so many injuries and losing a lot of games, whereas the Saints just winning their close games and won their last 3, I'm going to tip the Saints just by 8 points in a close game. Second game, also played on a Friday night, is between Fremantle Dockers and Brisbane Lions that opt to stay in Perth. Last week, the Dockers had a thrilling 6-point win against the Power, whereas the Lions lost to the Swans by a close 1-2 points. However, the Lions kicked 2 goals in the last 50 seconds to only lose by 2 points, and the results had flattened the Lions. The players in the mix for the Dockers are Walker, Sharp and McDonald. For the Lions, their players in the mix are Joyce, Brecken and Starswitch. Where the game would be won at, it's the Dockers full line and Brisbane's defence. For Fremantle, in the full line, you got Tracy, Amos, Ross, Bolton, Switkowski, Frederick. For the Lions in defence, you got Gardner, Harris, Dode, Fletcher, Wilmot and Zorko. And just looking at Fremantle's forward line, I can't see the Lions defenders stopping the big 3 tolls of Ross, Tracy and Amos. And I expect the Fremantle Dockers forward to kick more goals and score than the Lions. And I'm going to say Fremantle just by 9 points in a close game against the Brisbane Lions. Third game of the week, played on the Saturday lunchtime, is between Gold Coast Suns and GWS Giants. The players in the mix for the Suns are Sexton, Moyle and Rogers. For the Giants, their players in the mix are Keith, Leake and Vere. Where the game would be won at, I'm going to select Gold Coast Suns due to the home ground factor. The Suns have been top sides at home. They've been the Collingwood Magpies, they've been the Adelaide Crows, they've been the Brisbane Lions, all teams in the top 6. And I'm going to add GWS to this list. And I say the Suns, due to playing at home, to win by 15 points. The fourth game of the week is between Carlton and Port Adelaide Power, played on Saturday at Marvel Stadium during lunchtime. Last week, the Blues lost to Gold Coast Suns by 19 points, whereas the Power had a nail-biting 6-point loss to Fremantle Dockers. The players in the mix for the Blues are Binns, Pitnott and Sincotta. For the Power, their players in the mix are Jones, McKinlay and Finlayson. Where the game would be won at? Looking on paper, both sides are pretty even. They had narrow losses, or I should say the Power had a narrow loss to Freo. Carlton were very competitive against Gold Coast Suns and lost by 19 points. I can't separate these two sides. Because the game is played in Melbourne, Marvel Stadium, Carlton's home, I'm going to say Carlton just by 7 points in a close game. The next game, played on a Saturday afternoon at the MCG, is between Hawthorn Hawks and Melbourne Demons. The Hawks had a 64-point good win over the Maggies. For the D's, it's Troy Chapman's second game as acting caretaker coach. The players in the mix for the Hawks are Cyril, Butler and McKenzie. For the D's, their players in the mix are Jefferson, Campbell and Sharp. Where the game will be won at, it's just where the two sides are at this moment. The Hawks in the top 6, Melbourne languishing in the bottom 6. Goodwin's no longer the coach, will be Chapman's second game in charge. The Hawks are in a good run. They beat the Maggies last week by 64 points. They had a narrow loss to the Crows the previous week. The Hawks are starting to generate some good run coming to the business end of the season. Melbourne struggling and can't wait to see the end of the season. And I'm going to say the Hawks to beat the D's easily by 35 points. The next game, play on a Saturday night, is between Adelaide Crows and Collingwood. This will be my game of the week, and this game was played in Adelaide Oval. Last week, the Crows had a good win against the Eagles, whereas Collingwood were very disappointing and lost to Hawthorn by 64 points. The players in the mix for the Crows are Walker, Schomburg, Murphy and Borlase. For the Maggies, their players in the mix are Cox, Allen and Parker. Where the game will be won at, it's Adelaide's forward line. You got the big three tolls of Philfoot, Fogarty and Walker. And for Collingwood in defense, you got Moore and Frampton. And Howe is out with concussion. Who will they use to replace Howe? And just look at the Crows' forward line. They've got the big three and Isaac Rankin as a small medium forward. The Crows are in winning mode. They're doing awesome at this stage. And Collingwood just having a number of setbacks. They've won one of the last 4 games. And because of the Crows' power forward line, I'm going to say the Crows in the close one by 11 points. The next game, played on a Sunday lunchtime, is between North Melbourne Kangaroos and Richmond Tigers at Ninja Stadium in Tasmania. Last week, the Roos lost to the Giants by a hefty margin, and the Tigers lost to St Kilda in a close one by 4 points. The players in the mix for the Kangaroos are Phillips, Marley and Hanson Jr. For the Tigers, their players in the mix are Traynor, Gipkus and Sims. Where the game will be won at? Just look at the two sides on paper. The teams look pretty close. The Roos are missing Larkin and Curtis. Richmond had a close loss to the Saints last week. North Melbourne lost to the Giants from big margin. And a number of weeks ago, they lost to the Geelong Cats by 100 points. And I can't separate the two sides. Even though the game is in Tasmania, I want to see Richmond in a close one by 2 points. The next game, played on Sunday afternoon, is between Sydney Swans and Geelong Cats at the SCG. Last week, the Swans had a beautiful 2-point win against Brisbane Lions at the Gabba, whereas Geelong easily had a 44-point win against the Bombers. The players in the mix for the Swans are Laddams, Roberts and Warner. That's Corey Warner. For the Cats, their players in the mix are Dangerfield, Martin, Hughes and Stevens. Where the game will be won at, it's the midfield. If you look at the Swans midfield, you've got Grundy in ruck with the midfielders of Heaney, Gordon, Warner, Florent and Lloyd on the wings. For the Cats, you got standing ruck with the midfielders of Smith, Atkins, Holmes, with Humphreys and Quincas on their respective wings. Just look at the ruck setup. Grundy and Stanley. I expect Grundy to dominate against Stanley. Then the midfielders of Heaney, Gordon and Warner against Smith, Atkins and Holmes. I give the edge to Sydney's midfield, where you got two-way running Warner, elite kicking Gordon, and then on the wings you got Lloyd and Florent against Humphreys and Quincas. That's pretty even. I give the advantage to the Sydney Swans ruck midfield setup, and therefore they'll provide enough inside 50s to their forwards and kick a big score. Where last week Heaney had kicked 5 goals, I expect Heaney to do some more damage this week, as well as Happily and Braden Campbell plus McLean to kick lots of goals. And therefore, I'm going to say, in an upset, the Swans, a close one, 4 points. The last game, played on a Sunday late afternoon, is between the Western Bulldogs and West Coast Eagles at Marvel Stadium. The players in the mix for the Doggies are Davidson, Dolan and Cameras. For the Eagles, their players in the mix are Pocatelli, B. Williams and J. Williams, respectively. Just looking at the two teams, West Coast Eagles, last, dead bottom on the ladder, rebuilding, playing so many kids. The Western Bulldogs are in the final hunt, top 8. You got a team in the top 8 versus a team that's last in rebuilding, and I expect the Western Bulldogs to easily beat West Coast Eagles by 67 points. My round 23 tips are the Saints to beat the Bombers at Marvel on Friday night, and the following home teams to win their respective home games. That consists of Fremantle, Gold Coast Suns, the Blues, the Hawks and the Crows. The Tigers to beat the Kangaroos in Tassie. And on Sunday, the 2 home sides of Sydney Swans and Western Bulldogs to win their respective home games. Thank you for watching my video, and it will be appreciated if you can subscribe and comment to my videos. Hopefully you enjoyed my video, and see you next time. Cheers or bye.